Jim Jones. Compare the names. Look, Max Biggervale, Jim Jones. That don't even add up. That's not on my level, man.
It all began the morning of September 22nd at the Fort Lee Holiday Inn. Police are called there after a man is shot to death. The victim, David Taylor from Florida, was staying in room 227.
To get my room so I could ram this shit up, ram it up his ass. Right? My window was there. He tried to grab me. So when he came in the window, I punched him in the face.
Max B and Jim Jones were once closer than brothers. But the day Jim tossed that loyalty aside was the same day Max flipped the script, turning from his right-hand hitmaker into the wild storm nobody in Harlem saw coming. Rumors started flying, from allegedly taking Jim's girl to wrecking his ride and sparking chaos across Harlem just to send a message. Max B wasn't just talking, he was living every bar. Let's get into it. Charlie Wingate, better known to the world as Max B, was born in Harlem, New York, right in the heart of the grind where legends and hustlers are made. His journey began in the Abraham Lincoln Projects, surrounded by struggle and survival. Life wasn't easy. His mom battled addiction and time behind bars, leaving his grandmother to raise him. She was his rock. But even with her love, the streets were always whispering his name, waiting to pull him back in. Still, before he became Harlem's wave god, young Charlie was singing in the boys' choir of Harlem, finding the rhythm that would later define his entire sound. But that melody couldn't drown out the noise of reality. By 18, Max had already gotten caught up in the wrong crowd. In 1997, he was hit with robbery charges and served around 8 years behind bars. Yet that time didn't crush him. It carved him into something sharper. When he came home in 2005, he wasn't just Charlie anymore. He stepped out as Max Biggervale, a name born from giants: Biggie, Machiavelli, Tupac, and Jigga. He saw himself as the perfect mix: hypnotic flow, real pain, and unshakable confidence. When Max touched down, Harlem was alive. The Diplomats had the city blazing. Cam'ron and Jim Jones were the kings of Uptown. Max reconnected with Cam, who soon introduced him to Jim. Not long after, Max signed with Jim's label, Bird Gang, and started crafting heat with Harlem's own Dame Grease. The vibe was magic. In 2006, Max B dropped his debut mixtape, $1 Million Baby, and the streets went wild. His voice, his wave, that raw Harlem energy, it was electric. Bird Gang wasn't just hot, they were unstoppable. Alongside rising star stack bundles, Max became Jim's secret weapon, laying hooks that made every track explode. Songs like Baby Girl turned into instant classics, and Max's touch made every record sound larger than life. But no matter how hot the music got, Max could never fully outrun the streets. In September 2006, everything flipped on its head. Word got back to Max through his ex, Gina Conway, about a flashy dude named Alan J. Plowden, a high roller in the mortgage game who was rumored to be pulling off mail fraud scams. He was always rolling deep with stacks of cash, designer fits, and luxury whips. Gina told Max all about him, and allegedly that mix of jealousy and temptation took over. According to her, Max started talking about hitting a lick, saying it could change everything and that he'd make sure everyone got paid. What happened next? That's where the story gets messy. Max wasn't even there when it all went down, but prosecutors said he was the one who set the whole thing in motion. Gina Conway, who at the time was also dancing and hustling to get by, took the stand and told the court that Max sent her and his stepbrother, Kelvin Sims Leardam, to rob Plowden at a Holiday Inn in New Jersey. The plan sounded simple: hit the room while Plowden was out clubbing and grab the money. But everything that could go wrong did. Gina and Sims reportedly got lost for hours, missing exits and wasting time. By the time they reached the hotel, Plowden was back in his room, asleep beside another woman. Then a man named David Taylor walked in, totally unexpected. Sims panicked and fired a shot that turned a quick robbery into a deadly tragedy. From there, the dominoes started to fall fast. Gina was caught first, and when the pressure hit, she cracked wide open. She gave up everything to save herself, handing over a 169-page statement and putting Max's name right in the middle of it. She told investigators that Max had promised her love, money, and loyalty if she helped. But once it went bad, all that loyalty disappeared. When the feds came for Max, they came strong. He was arrested and hit with serious charges, including felony murder. Bail? a massive $2 million. While Max sat in that cold cell, time froze for him, but not for everyone else. Outside, Jim Jones, the same man who signed Max and called him family, was everywhere. Jim dropped We Fly High, Ballin', and it took over the charts. Max claimed he wrote that hit, along with others. But while Jim was on TV cashing checks and doing interviews, Max was behind bars fighting for his life and his name. After 10 long months, his bail was finally dropped to $90,000. And that's when Jim stepped in, but not like a friend should. Instead of helping out of loyalty, reports say he allegedly dangled that bail like leverage. Jim allegedly agreed to help get Max out only if Max signed over his publishing rights and committed to 6 albums under him.
I'm in his job already. I don't owe nothing. He got all his songs already. How you think he got so hot? Came out with all them tapes. I did that. I put them hooks together. Yeah. I made incredible music. All he did was rhyme 16s. Well, you know, I made the hooks. I made the melodies. Yeah. I made the shit.
Locked up and desperate, Max had almost no runway. So he signed, and Jim walked away with the wavy sounds payouts while Max got a short taste of freedom and a future in other people's hands. When Max B walked out in July 2007, he came back colder and sharper than before. Broke, betrayed, and bound by a contract that stripped his royalties, he watched the man he once called brother profit off hooks and ad-libs he'd built over years. Jim Jones had seen Max go through the system, and as Jim's influence climbed, Max's bank account didn't. The streets cheered Max's wave while the cash went elsewhere. Mixtapes, DVDs, and street chatter kept shouting Max's name, and the louder the wave got, the clearer it was. If Jim wasn't going to push him up, Max wasn't going to vanish quietly. He felt robbed, not only of status, but of future checks. Reports say Jim owned Max's publishing, which meant every hook, every melodic ad-lib, every catchy line Max created sent money to someone else's pocket. That stung deep. This wasn't only business, it got personal fast. The friendship curdled, loyalty cracked, and Max's mindset shifted toward retaliation and exposure. He left Bird Gang with an agenda and a public itch to call out those who'd taken what was his. It didn't take long for Max to find a true ally in French Montana. At that time, French wasn't the Billboard name he later became. He was a Bronx street figure with credibility from his Cocaine City DVD series and a reputation for being uncompromising. French already had tension with Jim, and when he and Max linked, their connection was electric, a union based on shared slights and mutual ambition. They coined Coke Wave, and the movement carved out space in mixtape culture like wildfire. Max had learned labels could lock you out. He didn't own publishing, he had no major label safety net, but he did have something vital, street trust and raw talent. So Max went underground and started handing music directly to the people for free, bypassing labels and corporate gatekeepers. He wasn't just releasing tracks, he was launching sonic strikes, direct shots at the industry, and those he felt betrayed by. His bars were pointed, his hooks were diamonds, and every release felt like a public courtroom. He didn't hold back. Each tape landed like a message. The first major blow came with Public Domain 3, a mixtape that tore through radio gloss and hit listeners with blunt hooks, strong melodies, and plain truths. Max's sound ruled the streets, and even without publishing rights or label support, he still shaped the culture and kept the wave alive for a new generation of fans and artists. The Public Domain 3 cover said it all. Max B stood in a graveyard posing beside tombstones with names like Millie, Jim Jones, and Vanilli Joel Santana carved into them. The message was loud. He was burying the old guard and calling them out as copycats. Max compared them to Milli Vanilli, the infamous duo caught lip-syncing to fame, and in his eyes, Jim and Jules were doing the same, riding the wave he built from scratch. He clowned them hard, dropping tracks with lines like, "I know them dudes need me," and his confidence was unmatched. But Max didn't stop at music. He went for reputations, egos, and everything that propped up Jim's image. One of the wildest shots came with his diss record, She Touched It in Miami. On it, Max made bold claims about Jim's longtime partner, saying things that had the entire hip-hop scene gasping. The bars were reckless, but they landed, painting Jim as a man getting played in his own circle, and the streets couldn't stop talking. Jim Jones was blindsided. He didn't expect that kind of heat from someone he once called brother. He tried to deny it all, brushing off the rumors and trying to downplay Max's role in Dipset's success. He said Max didn't write "We Fly High," his biggest hit, but the streets weren't buying it. Max's voice was clearly on the reference tracks floating around, and fans started questioning who really made the magic behind the music. That's when things turned physical. Max claimed Jim tried to catch him slipping, saying one night Jim's crew boxed in his car, trying to set him up. But according to Max, he saw it coming, hit the gas, and rammed Jim's Bentley to break free. He even bragged that he threw hands before speeding off, later showing off dents in his car like trophies from a battle. French Montana and others backed his story, and soon it became legend. Max wasn't just fighting back, he was building his myth one move at a time. Then came November 2008. Max and French decided to confront Jim face to face. They rolled into Manhattan, deep, walking straight into the studio where Jim was recording, and made it clear things weren't sweet anymore. Max later claimed that Jim got spooked and called the police when it escalated, something the streets never let him forget. Not long after, their crews clashed again, this time at a Brooklyn club. Chaos broke loose, bottles flying, security rushing in, and police with K9 units storming the spot. It was like something out of a movie, but this wasn't fiction. It was Harlem drama playing out in real time. By the time the dust settled, Max B hadn't just dissed Jim Jones, he'd rebranded him as a punchline in his own city. Max B had turned into a cult icon, the kind of artist who didn't need a record label or radio push to prove his worth. Even trapped in contracts that barely gave him a dime, he found a way to build a legacy straight from the pavement. The streets kept his name alive, and mixtapes carrying his wave blasted from cars and barbershops long after he left the studio. But behind all that momentum, Max was staring down the biggest fight of his life, a criminal trial that could freeze his career forever. On June 9th, 2009, Max B walked into the Bergen County Courthouse like a man who believed every word of his own story. Cameras flashed, fans shouted, and he carried that same Harlem confidence in his stride. His legal team was just as bold, saying they'd ripped holes in the prosecution's main witness during cross-examination. That witness was Gina Conway, the woman at the heart of everything. She had already turned herself in and testified against both Max and his stepbrother Kelvin Leardam in exchange for a reduced sentence. Max's defense team painted her as bitter and desperate, claiming she was twisting stories to save herself. But courtrooms aren't ruled by swagger. They run on evidence and perception. When the jury came back, reality hit hard. Max B was found guilty on 9 out of 11 counts, including conspiracy, armed robbery, aggravated assault, and felony murder. It was a crushing blow for a man who swore he was being framed as the mastermind of something gone wrong. Prosecutors argued he had planned the setup, saying he encouraged others to do the job while he sat back expecting the payout. Everything came down to Gina Conway's testimony. She struck a deal with the state, dropping her original murder charge in exchange for lesser ones like robbery and manslaughter, landing her a recommended 18-year sentence. The defense fired back, saying Gina flipped the script to cut time off her own case. They insisted she was rewriting history to make Max look like the puppet master. Ironically, even Gina admitted on the stand that Max didn't directly plan the robbery, saying she used his name to convince her boyfriend Kelvin to go through with it. The defense leaned on that moment hard, arguing that Gina later blamed Max out of heartbreak and self-preservation. But the jury wasn't convinced. When the verdict was read, Max's world collapsed. The man who built his own wave, who turned street talk into poetry, now faced a sentence longer than most lifetimes. On September 3rd, 2009, Max B was officially handed 75 years in prison. The same Harlem legend who once had the city chanting his name walked out in cuffs, still defiant, still claiming his truth, and still believing that one day the wave would rise again. Max B's parole date was set for 2042, a number that felt like forever. One day, he was a street legend with the city chanting his name, and the next, he was an inmate watching that same world move on without him. While fans mourned, Jim Jones seemed to see business opportunity. From his point of view, it looked like he had pulled the ultimate checkmate. Max was locked up, his voice silenced, and Jim still owned the publishing rights to all of Max's work. Every hook, every melody, every bar that carried the wave. The royalties kept flowing, and for a while, it looked like Jim had won the long game. He even mocked Max in interviews, calling him names, acting like he was irrelevant, and saying Max's time had come and gone. He played it cool in public, pretending he'd moved on, treating Max's music like old stock sitting on a shelf collecting dust. But it wasn't as airtight as he thought, because even from behind bars, Max wasn't done. The streets still loved him. His wave had already become a movement, and Max made sure his presence stayed alive. From the inside, he was writing letters, sending messages, connecting with French Montana, DJs, and independent labels who refused to let his name fade. Then, in May 2010, everything shifted. A legal victory hit like thunder. A judge ruled that Jim Jones no longer had any control over Max B's music career. The court found that Max had already fulfilled the terms of both contracts he'd signed with Jim back in 2005 and 2007. In plain words, Max was free. Not from prison yet, but from the paper chains that had tied his art and money to someone else's pockets. That ruling gave Max a new kind of power. Even while still locked up, he was able to finally release his long-awaited album Vigilante Season in 2011. And the impact was instant. The streets reminded everyone that Max's wave hadn't gone anywhere. His melodic flow, his smooth gangster rhythm, that effortless swagger, it became the blueprint for a whole generation of rappers that followed. You couldn't turn on the radio without hearing pieces of Max's style. The harmonies, the cadence, even the talk about waves and vibes, all traced back to the man sitting behind those prison walls. His sound had become immortal. Then came the twist nobody saw coming. In 2016, after 7 long years behind bars, Max's new legal team filed a game-changing appeal. They argued that his original lawyer had failed him, that instead of building a strong defense, the attorney was allegedly chasing fame and future profits off Max's career if he won the case. That motion, known as post-conviction relief, actually worked. The judge vacated Max's original 75-year sentence. In a stunning turn, Max took a plea deal, pleading guilty to aggravated manslaughter. And the deal cut his sentence drastically, from 75 years down to 20, then to 12. After serving years already, freedom was finally within reach. Max B, once thought lost to the system, now had a date circled in red, November 9th. The wave wasn't dead after all. It was preparing to rise again. By that point, Max B wasn't just a rapper, he was a living myth. His influence had spread from underground mixtapes to major label hits, echoing through freestyle sessions, street corners, and even Kanye West's studio. Back in 2016, Kanye tried to name his album Waves, but the internet and Max's loyal fans quickly reminded him who started that movement. Kanye eventually gave Max his flowers, even featuring his voice on a track as a sign of respect. Drake and Wiz Khalifa also shouted him out publicly, calling him one of the pioneers who shaped their sound. Even Jim Jones, in one of his rare, honest interviews, admitted that if Max hadn't been locked up, he might have become as big, maybe even bigger, than Drake himself. Now, as 2025 approaches, one question still floats through hip-hop. Are Max B and Jim Jones still enemies? Or has time finally cooled the fire? From behind bars, Max spoke with surprising calm. He said he'd changed, that he was a husband, a father of 4, and no longer the man driven by old beefs and street pride. His words carried maturity, like someone finally at peace after years of chaos. He even hinted that he'd be open to squashing the feud, saying it was time to move forward. But on the other side, Jim Jones kept his distance. Even after patching things up with French Montana in 2023 and working on new music, Jim made it clear that Max was still a complicated chapter. He said he didn't wish Max any harm, but he wasn't ready to play friends either. So the story stands: 2 Harlem legends forever linked by fame, betrayal, and legacy. Whether peace ever comes between them or not, one thing's for sure: the wave Max B created still moves through the culture louder than ever. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this breakdown, and stay tuned for the next one, because this story, it's far from over. See you in the next one.